Hello and welcome. This is Ricky Schoonover, your local realtor here in Denver at 8Z Real Estate and the host of Denver's monthly real estate podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report. Well, last month we talked a little bit about how the decade-long reign supreme for the sellers has finally come to an end. It wasn't an immediate thing. It's not like hitting a light switch. It's more of a gradual market shift where more homes are coming on the market, less of them are selling quickly, more price reductions. And yes, the interest rates are still a little bit elevated, but I just spoke to my lender partner, Jackson Riggs, out there at the Mortgage Network just last week. And there's ways now with the loans and with the rates to get you into the fives without costing you a ton of money and get you into the high fives. If you're on a jumbo loan, like something above $1 million there, then your loan would be a little bit higher at 6.25. But now we're in the high fives. The reason that is because the feds are going to cut. They've already made strong indications, let's say, that they're going to cut in September. So that's already kind of built into the market. The market is already anticipating those cuts. So when those cuts do come next month and you see all the headlines like, oh, the feds finally cut the rates by 25 basis points or 50 basis points. That is already priced in. That's priced in since about the second week of August. So right now we are getting into the high fives for our interest rates. So if you've been waiting around, you're like, I don't want to pay 8% interest rates. I don't want to pay 7% interest rates. I don't want to pay 6.5% interest rates. Well, your time has come. You've been patient and that has worked out for your favor. And the market has slowed down a little bit. As we spoke in our last episode, they hadn't gone down drastically. When I looked from last year's prices in July to this year's prices in July on I think a $700,000 home, we're talking less than 5%. Now, if you bought your home back in those unicorn years, right after the pandemic or right in the middle of that pandemic when the government was throwing money at everybody for everything and sending people checks, and that's kind of what helped explode our inflation. And that's not a political statement because it was both parties that did it. But they were throwing every bit of money they could at the pandemic to make sure we didn't crumble. And what we did is probably hyped up the market, juiced up the market a little bit too much. And then inflation started kicking in. And folks were buying houses. They were going out, standing in lines of 20 people deep, 30 people deep at an open house. They're all coming through that house within about 10 minutes of taking a look at the house real quick and then going back with their realtors to write those offers. And they were writing them for $50,000, $75,000, $100,000. I had one personally that was down in Highlands Ranch. Sight unseen. It was a couple that were separating and we put their house on the market. We had a certain price that we had looked at all the comps and we'd come up with our price. And we're like, okay, well, you don't have a finished basement. So when we look at all these other ones here in Highlands Ranch that are close to you that don't have finished basements, here's where the price is at. So let's go in, pretty aggressively. I know you guys need the money and need to get moving on here with your lives. So let's get this sold. And even before I got to the market, I was waiting for my professional photography to come back from editing so I can get it into the MLS. So I did put it in there as coming soon and I had someone that wrote an offer, $100,000 over asking. Hey, we're going to do an inspection, but we're not going to ask for any repairs. And I thought it was a joke. I really did not think it was serious. I reached out to the agent, spoke to that particular agent. We had a great conversation. Yes, it was a real buyers. Yes, she was serious. They had been looking in that area, in that specific little area, because there was a school they wanted their children to go to, and it was walking distance. And so they put an offer in $100,000 over. So if you're in that situation where you bought in 21 or maybe late 2020 or 21, even maybe 22, and you paid $100,000 over the ask or $75,000 over the ask, those prices were pretty inflated. So if now you're trying to sell your home and you're like, hey, Ricky, what's my home worth? And I'm like, oh, you know what? It's probably worth about $880,000, maybe $920, somewhere between $920 and $880 is what I'm really looking at here. And they're like, wait a minute, we paid $1 million for this home. Oh, did you buy it in 2020, 2021, 2022? Yeah, we paid $100,000 over, but that's what they were all going for at the time. So that's what they were worth. Well, kind of, but the market quickly adjusted, and when the interest rates went up to 8%, which they were about a year and a half, 2 years ago, that really adjusted the prices to where the prices came down a little bit. So if you bought in those unicorn years, then 5% maybe doesn't apply to you. It might be a little more than 5%. But in the scheme of things, even if it was $100,000 less on $1 million, it's 10%. So it's a 10% correction in the extremes, and really more of about a 2.5 to a 5% correction is what we've really seen. So last month, I declared we were in a buyer's market. I said, you know what? We've been going at this with sellers for the past decade. They've had a good run. But now we're in a buyer's market. And I had some of my listeners reach out to me and say, Ricky, how can we be in a buyer's market? Look at the prices of homes. They're, the average price is $700,000. So the affordability is not there. So it's not really a buyer's market. And that is true to some extent. But what you're seeing in today's market is there are a lot of people out there making a lot of money and they're able to pay these prices. So affordability really depends on your job and how much money you have coming in, your debt to income ratios, your personal situation, if that home is affordable to you or not. So overall, the market seems unattainable for a lot, and it's also very attainable for quite a few out there. So it's really, it's one of those things like beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? If you have the money, then the home is affordable to you. If you don't have the money, then that market's not affordable to you. And that's kind of where we are right now. There's enough people in the market that are able to afford these prices that are sort of keeping these prices where they are. Even though I've just told you they did dip slightly, but only about 2.5% to 5% on most cases. But I don't want you to get focused just on the price or just get focused on the interest rate, because there's a lot of other factors that go into it. One of it's supply and demand. And right now we've got more houses on the market, so we got more of a supply than we do demand. So that's helping the buyers now have more homes to choose from, and not only more homes to choose from, but then you can take your time with those homes. You can really, some of them have been on the market for 25 days, 35 days, 45 days, 120 days, whatever it is. And so I'm working with a buyer right now, and he's like, Ricky, where do I get a good deal? And I was like, your best deal is, he's like, I'm going to wait for the price to drop, and then I'm going to put the offer in. I said, that's not the best strategy. I said, it might work out for you. Any strategy might work, but that's probably not your best strategy, because if the seller just lowers the price, like let's say they're going into the weekend on Thursday, they lower it by $10,000. Say it was a condo at $400,000 and they lowered to $390,000. Well, they're not going to want to go much lower than $390,000 until they have gone through that whole weekend, maybe had an open house, maybe the following weekend, so maybe 2 weeks later, and then maybe by that third week, their realtor, you can bet their realtor is talking to them and saying, hey, we lowered the price by 10 grand. We went through an open house that first weekend, had a little activity, but no one put an offer in. We went through the next weekend, again, we didn't get any offers in. We're coming up on Labor Day, so we'll use that for an example. And we went through the Labor Day weekend. We didn't get any offers then, but maybe people were out of town for the Labor Day. So here you are mid-September, and you had only done a price drop, but it was in the middle of August. So now we're almost a month into it, and you still haven't sold the property yet. You can guarantee that the realtor is talking to their seller and trying to talk to them about maybe another price reduction. Before the price reduction happens, that's where the magic happens. That's where you put in your offer. You go on a low ball offer. Maybe the realtor is talking about maybe another $10,000 or $15,000 drop, but you talk to your buyer and say, let's go in with a $25,000 low ball offer, or $30,000 less than what they're asking for. Or let's do $20,000 plus ask them for a $5,000 concession, like credit at closing, to help you with your closing costs or help you with that interest rate. So if you get them just before they make the price drop, first of all, no one else in the world knows, right, that the price is coming down, but you just have to kind of guess. Every seller's a little different, but not the rest of the world. If they've just made a price drop, they're going to want to go through the market. If they haven't had a price drop in 2 or 3 weeks, but they've been talking about it to their realtor, but they haven't actually pulled the trigger, that's the one where you can go in and put in a low ball offer and maybe get a good deal. But like I said, it is a buyer's market, but you can't just focus on interest rate. You can't just focus on price. Yes, they're important, but there's other things. Supply and demand is a big one. Right now we have more supply, so you have more time to really look at the properties. And then getting back to the affordability part, what I was talking about earlier is the job market. As long as the majority of people have jobs out there and are bringing in income, and their income seems secure, like they're going to keep their jobs, and their companies are growing or at least maintaining, that's good for the market. And that's good for you as buyers. It's really good for sellers, but it's also good for buyers that you have some level of competition out there. You're keeping the market open, but you do have more time on the market. You have as much time in the world. That's what I always tell my buyers. You have as much time in the world to think about this home until another buyer steps in and expresses interest. Even if they don't write the offer, but they express interest, like their realtor calls the listing broker and asks them, what the seller's looking for and that kind of thing. Even if they don't submit the offer, that seller's mindset's going to change. Like, oh, we had that person that came in last weekend. Now we have this person that's asking us about, what we're looking for in our offer. So now they're going to be a little less willing to negotiate. They'll still negotiate, but now they know they've got 2 buyers to pit against each other. So you may not get as quite as good as deal. So you do have time in the market, but you have as much time as you possibly need until another buyer steps into the picture. So just keep that in mind. So you know the job market strength is good. Then that's going to be continue on to be a bit of a healthy market. And then we talk about the interest rates. We talked about this before. There are some loan costs, and you talk about it, and they're like, well, the interest rates are 5.9. Let's just say 5.9. You can buy those down a little bit with a few $1,000s. Usually, it's called a cost. You put another 1,500 or 1,600. It kind of changes. The algorithm changes. But let's just say it's 1,500. You might have a 5.9. You put in 1,500. You might be able to get a 5.75 and lock that in for 30 years. Or you could do a temporary buy down where you put the money into a little piggy bank, and then each month you're making your payment. They draw a little bit from that piggy bank as well. And then when you get to the point where you're going to sell the home or you're going to refinance whatever's left in that piggy bank at that time, a year and a half, 2 years down the road, then that becomes part of your closing costs. So you can use that, the 2-1 buy down in that regard. All right. And then the other things that kind of affect our population, right? There's some people moving out of Denver. It's getting expensive here. So people are moving out of Denver, but we have plenty of people moving into Denver as well. So it might be a little bit of a net migration loss right now. So that might be helping the supply side as well. People are selling their homes and moving out of the area. So you may have a little more homes on the market. So that's helping you with those days on market and the time that you have before you purchase the home. Well, we've already talked a little bit about affordability. We talked about the job market. And then also short-term rentals. Denver's not the friendliest. I tried to do an Airbnb here. I already own a home. That's my primary residence. We bought another home. We were going to make our primary residence and then do Airbnb, but that didn't work out with the city of Denver. They did a pretty thorough vetting job, and they're like, you know what, you already have this other house in the city. This one, they can't both be your primary residence. And we weren't able to get a license. So there are people out there that get licenses. It has to be your primary, at least here in Denver, it has to be your primary residence. And then you're renting it out just temporarily, for days on end or whatever. So just looking at how the second home market is or how the short-term rental market is, that can also affect the affordability, right? That makes it a little less affordable in some instances. And then transportation and infrastructure. We're talking about the light rail system. We're talking about all the different scooters. If you're in downtown area, you can jump on a scooter or a bicycle. They're electric these days. You can pretty much get anywhere you need to go fairly quickly. And then sidewalks. Sidewalks a big one. Not for the scooters. Try to keep the scooters and bicycles off the sidewalks, right? But nice ADA style sidewalks, nice, good wide sidewalks, 3-4 feet wide, and ramps, and where people can push their strollers. Those neighborhoods tend to do pretty well. They tend to hold their values, and that's why you see a lot of that up in like Highlands and West Highlands. If you walk around right there, they have a lot of tree-lined streets. There's a lot of old growth trees, and then all the sidewalks and the ramps and everything just make it a pleasant experience to get around the neighborhood, and that really does help with the values as well. Regulatory changes and growth caps. I know Boulder had a really serious no growth cap, no, we're not building anything, we're not going to approve any builds. That in the long run will end up hurting affordability. In the short run, it might seem smart, right? Control your growth a little bit and kind of grow smart. But what happens is then you end up on the supply side, you end up on the demand side where you don't have enough housing for everybody. So you really got to play on those a little bit carefully. Anyways, let's recap this. We are in a buyer's market. Yes, prices are elevated. Prices are probably not coming down too much. We might see a little softening. We've already seen 2.5% to 5%, for the most part. We do see those unicorn years. If you bought back in 2021 or right around that time frame when everyone had money and everyone was paying over the asking price, it may feel like the market has crashed a little bit to you because you paid $100,000 over. The market came down about 2.5% to 5%. Now all of a sudden you're losing $100,000 on your home, and it seems like a lot for some people, and it is a lot. It's just the reality of the market and where we were in that time and where we are now. The market's changed a lot. So buyer's market, if you want to sell your property, certainly can. Just got to make sure it looks really, really good. Professional staging, cleaned, curb appeal, making sure you leave enough room in there where a potential buyer walks in and they feel like they can live in that home. They can move themselves and move their furniture in that home and feel comfortable. Really, really important right now for that. And so just don't focus on one thing. There's so many levers when it comes to the housing market, whether that be availability, whether that be supply demand, which is kind of interchangeable, whether it be the local job market, how much people are making, how steady the job market is. Those are also factors that when they go askew, like let's say that the housing or the employment goes like skyrocketing, and people start feeling uneasy about their jobs, you can see the market's going to go down. If employment gets very strong and everybody has a job, then you're going to see that supply tighten up a little bit. But we are in a buyer's market, and so you've got average about 45 days on market to make your decision on which home you're going to buy. You can probably get some deals when you go to put in that offer, especially if they had a price cut or they haven't had a price cut yet and it's been 3 weeks, or they had a price cut and now it's been 3 weeks since that price cut. Those are the ones you want to target. Do not wait for the price drop and then think that's the time to jump in, because everybody else is jumping in at that same time, right? So try to time it if you can. I always say don't time the market, but on this instance, if you can find it, I'm not saying time it, but if you can find a home where it's been on the market for 3 weeks, they haven't had a price drop, or they had a price drop, it's been 3 weeks since that price drop, don't wait for the other price drop, because as soon as it drops another 10, 20 grand, people are going to jump in. Try to get it right there just before they're lowering the price. They've probably already had the conversation with their realtor, and they're like, okay, it's been 3 weeks. We haven't sold it yet. I'll tell you what, on Thursday, go and lower it another 10 grand. And then before that Thursday comes, let's say it's Wednesday, you put your offer in at $30,000 less. It'll be like, oh, we were going to lower at 10. So now we're only talking about 20, and they might negotiate with you on that 20 and maybe get it up another 10, and you end up with $20,000 off on that home. So there's some strategy there on this buyer's market. So make sure you are being guided by someone that's in the trenches like myself. Oh, and if you're on my YouTube channel, go right there and hit that subscribe button. If it's not right there, it's going to be right there. Hit subscribe for me. I'd really appreciate it. We're trying to build up our following. We just got to the point where our YouTube channel is now monetized, or we're working through that process to get it monetized, but we've met all the metrics. So thank you for all my followers and my subscribers. I really appreciate it. Keep that coming. And we're going to close up today. So yeah, buyer's market. If you're a seller, we got to work hard, make sure the house looks perfect. And for a buyer, you got a little time. Make sure it's the right home for you. Make sure you check your commutes, make sure you check your schools, make sure you check your places of worship. If you like to walk to coffee shops and bars and restaurants, make sure those are all available to you in that area, and then really vet that house. And then just know when you have your home inspection, that seller, if they've been waiting for a seller or a buyer for weeks or months, they're not going to want to let you go. So when you get your home inspection, if there's some things in there that make you feel a little uneasy about that purchase, don't be afraid to ask for those repairs. Get yourself a new HVAC if it needs it, or a new roof if it needs it, whatever it might need. If there's some major repairs done and the seller didn't disclose those, or they didn't know about those, get those things done. Make sure you're checking the sewer lines. Make sure you're checking for radon, all those things. Have someone professionally guiding you. If you're looking to purchase a home right now, you're looking to sell a home, give me a call, 720-688-5110. Thank you very much for tuning in. Ricky Schoonover, 8Z Real Estate. You're listening to Denver's monthly real estate podcast, the Denver Homes Market Report. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next month.